Welcome to Rising Tide Startups, where today's most exciting solopreneurs share their startup stories. They also deliver tangible strategies that they would implement personally if starting their business over today. Each episode is a startup masterclass. Make sure you take notes. Take it away, Kevin.
This is Kevin Pruitt with another episode of Rising Tide Startups. And my guest today is Arjun Rai. Arjun, thanks for joining us on Rising Tide.
Absolutely. Thank you. Such an honor to be on your show. And hello from New York City.
New York City, just hopefully post Ida, as I hope you recovered. You can see he's in his bomb shelter right there. He's ducked down and trying to stay safe in the storm. But Arjun, if you and I were at a networking event, man, just introduce yourself to me.
Sure. So I would say usually, hey, my name is Arjun, like Argentina without the Tina. I'm the founder of Hello Woofy, which is smart marketing for underdogs. And we call small business owners like you and me the underdogs of the world who don't really have a degree or a PhD in digital marketing, but we help you out with some smart technology here and there to optimize a whole bunch of things, including social, blog, and smart speaker marketing.
So school, background, education, where you from? Where'd you grow up?
Oh boy. So I would say I was a terrible student. For the longest time, I was
the best entrepreneurs probably are.
Yeah, for the longest time, I was thinking about, how could I do my own thing? All the way from 7th grade, I was researching the Bill Gates, the Steve Jobs of the world. I even reached out to a couple of, notable names from the Forbes 400 and eventually got to a couple of them and had a conversation and exchanged a couple of messages. So I would say been an entrepreneur at heart from a very young age, but as far as college is concerned, I went to the New York Institute of Technology here on the Upper West Side, about 40 blocks from where I live now, and but I had a 60%, maybe 50% absence rate because I was every single week, almost every single day, I was at a meetup, I was at a conference, some sort of dinner where there were entrepreneurs, there were investors, people who I can learn from, get mentorship from. And so I really did turn the city into my own playground, if you will, for all my entrepreneurial endeavors. So that's that. Originally from India, born in India, New Delhi, and moved to Chicago when I was 4 years old. And so did the whole immigrant thing, moved around every 6 months, 3 months, 1 year, and multiple apartments, multiple cities, and finally settled in New Jersey, Central Jersey, where my dad still has his house. And I've been in New York for 10 years.
So I am really interested, and you can go through this as quickly or as serendipitously or as serpentine through this process you want to, but I'm curious the roadmap. So let's talk maybe, and you may even go pre-grad, pre-NYIT time, but what's been some of the things that you've tried that either were somewhat successful or were miserable failures, or I'm just really curious. We want to tell the whole story.
Yeah, I'll stick to Hello Woofy. I mean, in the beginning, in the beginning, it was just an idea, and I was trying to build a platform for people on the go who were influencers and creators. This was back in 2016, and because with my previous company, I knew that shipping product is very, very important, not scope creeping, getting an MVP out the door, getting it into the hands of customers. So when I started this company, it was very important for me to find the right resources that were incredibly affordable and scalable, which included at that time Upwork, talent on Upwork. Mm-hmm. And in fact, at that time, it wasn't even called Upwork; it was called something else. But I quickly realized that was the best way to prove an idea as I was working on my next thing. And so I guess learning from my mistakes and with my previous venture in terms of a startup was that you got to get the MVP out the door, and if you don't, you can literally be caved in with your scope creeping, with your wireframing, and the whole 9 years and never actually deliver a product. So that was one mistake I found and I had to solve when I was building Hello Woofy. Then I realized that raising capital from people is one thing, and then taking their advice is another. Usually it's not. Usually you think everyone has your best interest at heart, but when we end up raising capital from one specific investor, we brought on a CTO that they recommended, we brought on a senior developer that they recommended, and both of them caused more issues than anything else, and I had to fire both of them. And then with 10K in the bank, I had to basically put down $120,000 in credit cards, 50,000 in cash to, quote unquote, turn the company around. And that was back in 2018, after a series of decisions. And so I learned that you have to vet everyone that comes to the table, no matter how vetted they are by other people, or if you got the references from other people. So I learned
Is that
quickly
investor and employee alike?
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So we then we then were able to find a great team again, back on Upwork, that we were able to scale with, and within a year we relaunched the company. Unfortunately, my mom passed away in the middle of that while we were relaunching the company, so had some it just had some moment to kind of look inside and see what was important to me and what was not important to me. And thank God one of the investors came in through Meet the Drapers. If you know Tim Draper, his show ended up reaching out to us saying, "Hey, we heard some good things about you. We'd love for you to be on the show." Originally they rejected us, and then they sent me an email a few days later and saying, "Hey, if you can make it to California, it'll be great." And so I ended up winning the show, second place, and we were broadcasted in front of like tens of millions of people, and we raised nearly $730,000 in equity crowdfunding. So our customers kept investing,
Wow.
and the public kept investing. So a lot of miracles happened. And I was just saying the other lesson is, if you keep on going, the only thing you have to worry about is outlasting your next competitor. It's kind of like the saying, if there are two people running away from the bear, the other person just has to run faster than the other person,
Exactly.
right? And so I realized that this isn't about getting to $1 billion status or a unicorn status in 12 months. This is about building product, growing steadily, providing value to your customers, showing revenue, showing steady growth. And so I almost took a meditative approach to saying, okay, I need to steadily grow this into the biggest company helping the smallest. So there are quite a few lessons along the way, both on the product, technical, hiring, raising capital. I mean, there's so much. It's probably going to be worth a movie at some point.
That is one that I would certainly watch, because I'm a little bit like you. I'm a little bit of an entrepreneurial junkie. So, it's like my crack. So it's what I listen to. I spend time thinking about, for sure. But I'm curious, the two things that, as you were talking, two things that came to mind. One was like, how does Hello Woofy look different today than it did
Yeah.
when you first launched it? Because it sounded like there was a
Oh,
pretty major shift in there somewhere.
it's so funny. I was just pulling out some old business cards and how the logo looked, because we had stickers that said social media's best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'll share my screen real quick. You'll see in my deck, it says Hello Woofy, smart marketing for underdogs. And it's interesting because over a period of time you start iterating, you start pitching the company and seeing what sticks, what doesn't stick, what the feedback is. That's one of the other lessons, is listen to your customers and the audience and investors, and average out the entire feedback that ends up coming in. So we constantly kept changing the logo,
Mm-hmm.
not so much the logo, but more of the slogan,
Right.
so that one would
Tagline.
resonate. Yeah, so one would resonate more. And today, I think smart marketing, we don't even say AI driven and data science. We don't get into the complexities of it. It's just smart, just simply smart, third grade level language. And so that's one of the things I would say. Originally, we actually just started off as an iOS app. And we said we need to build this for creators on the go while they're in their cars, heading to the airport. We need to build it, not for a desktop, but for a mobile device. And we quickly figured out that was a mistake. All of our customers wanted the desktop. Today, they ask for an app as well. We have an app version, right, which is a much simpler version. But we realized that we should have talked to the customer ahead of time. But we got some market validation as a result, as well. So now we're not only an iOS mobile app, we're now on almost every major platform through the web. And we have an Android app and also an iOS app. Now, in addition to that, we have a presence on Amazon Alexa we can talk about later in terms of smart speaker marketing. But there's just, again, we listened to what was sticking, what isn't sticking on the product side, on the branding side. Even our logo, I had a friend from college make the original logo, and then we ended up hiring someone from online. And so now, and it's actually a real dog. I'll show you this is my dog in real life. And so we were like, we got to support small businesses. So we basically made the dog with my glasses.
Yeah, it's a mashup between the owners. So
Yes, yes, he's a 4-year-old little puppy for sure.
yeah, I see it. Is that like a Maltese or?
It is, yeah,
Okay.
exactly. I grew
All
up in
right.
Maltese, yeah.
So I'm curious when you talked about kind of, funding in your kind of after your pivot, after you had to leverage your credit cards to the max
Yeah,
and, get all these bank cards. And I'm sure you got some airline miles thrown in there because that type of thing. But how
yeah.
does the people that invested, if it was kind of crowdsourced, is this one of these things where you say, okay, everybody that kicks in $100 will give you 2 years worth of service, or is it like
Yeah.
a Kickstarter kind of campaign?
Yeah, sort of. So the difference between equity crowdfunding and crowdfunding is exactly that, where you can get an option or essentially a promise to shares in the company. So traditionally, Kickstarter did really well. Indiegogo did really well to get your loyal customers involved and become your champions. But after a couple of companies that had raised through crowdfunding, went to sell, or they had some sort of an exit, the customers thought to themselves, well, we took the biggest risk because in some cases none of these companies actually shipped. So it's quite a bit of a risk on the customer side to say, hey, I really like this idea. I'm going to put down $100 or $500 and maybe get my product or
Right.
something a year or two later. And then they would see that, hey, some of these companies were selling for a lot of money or appreciating in value for a lot. So long story short, equity crowdfunding called Reg CF and Reg A came out and allowed your customers to invest in the company, own shares in the company, or at least have a promise to through a vehicle called convertible notes or SAFE.
Yeah, safe notes. Yeah.
So in our case, we actually turned it into a business model. We said, hey, grab a license from us for $49 a year, $99 a year. We have plans that go all the way up to $1,200 a year, and they do 10 times, 20 times more than what our competitors do. So grab the license, grab it on a yearly basis. It's a lifetime deal, so every year it's the same price, and invest as low as $100 into our previous campaigns. We're getting ready to launch another campaign soon as well, and you can have shares in the company and use and you can use the software and be an evangelist and be an ambassador and affiliate. If you become an affiliate, you potentially can make all of it back, your investment plus the amount you spend on the software itself, potentially. So it's actually a part of our business model now. We let our customers invest on an ongoing basis through equity crowdfunding platforms like WeFunder and Republic. And if to just put it in numbers, our average lifetime value before we introduced the new pricing tiers was about $500. And so if a customer potentially was putting in $100, that lifetime value theoretically went up 20%. Now, I don't know anything else that gives you an increase in lifetime value from a customer by 20%. And it just creates that loyalty. And then if you create a Facebook group, if you create a Slack channel, however you want to nurture your followers and listen to them for their feedback, that relationship is so much stronger than any other company.
So how do you determine? I mean, did you have to place a valuation on the company, and then you say, okay, you kick in $200 and you get 1/10% of a share or something like that?
So it's all proportional. It's all proportional in terms of how much you put in and how much the valuation of the company is. There's a cap on the convertible note as well, so it has to convert at a certain level before the next tranche. But we originally started off at a $3 million valuation, and then on the show, on the Meet the Draper show, Tim asked me, so what's the valuation? And then say that on the camera. And so I was like, okay, it's $5 million. Is I had a range, and I had talked to Republic before, and so I picked 5 million, and then I said 5 million on the TV show. And then once the TV show was done, we raised on a pre-money of 9 million. And so it was we kept on increasing depending on our revenue, our growth, and the product side.
And this regulation, this allows like non-qualified investors to actually invest in a startup.
Non-accredited investors, yeah.
Non-accredited, yeah.
Yeah, and there's
a
limit.
A cap? I'm sorry, go ahead. Finish what you were saying, and then I'll ask you the question.
Yeah, so you're actually, that's exactly it. There is a cap, depends on your income. So you just have to go to the platforms and they'll tell you how much you can invest depending on your income. But it is highly risky. This is why we have to file a lot of documentation. It's called the Form C. And we have to be audited every year to make sure that our financials are straight. So there's a lot of legal stuff we have to do, but it's almost like an IPO, but it's a lot simpler.
Yeah.
And if you do Reg A, you could be spending a lot, 10 times more capital in legal fees, but the Reg A allows you to raise, a lot more money as well.
I mean, one interesting thing is that, so oftentimes, and I think you mentioned it earlier, oftentimes you with money, you get advice.
Yeah.
But if you've got 10,000 shareholders, then, that own 1/100th of a percent,
Yeah.
they don't have a lot of voice in the direction of the company. It's kind of
Yeah.
just kind of it's diluted, voice or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So the original investors prior
Yeah.
to say 2018, are they still engaged in the company?
Yeah.
Even the ones that you had to fire their best friends that they ask you to hire?
I mean, if we promised shares, they were on a schedule, or they vested, or we it depends on the individual use case, the individual circumstances. But we had allotted 10% originally in terms of an employee pool. We increased it to about 11%. And so as people came in and left, or as advisors came in and left, we were thanking them for their service with shares or other ways. But so that's just normal business. You have to create an employee pool. You have to
Right.
have packages. You have to incentivize and things like that. But it has done really well for me in terms of having that mindset of structuring a company from the get-go in that way, because a lot of founders don't realize that from the get-go, from the incorporation, you have to divvy up your shares, the employee pools. You have to think about advisory agreements, clawbacks, founder agreements, things of that nature. So highly recommend getting a great attorney that knows what he or she is talking about or doing, and especially in the venture side.
Yeah. Yeah. That is wise advice. That's what's certainly wise advice. I don't want to waste all your time just asking you to do an investor 101 class. So I really want to talk about the product. I want to talk about the company. So drill down, like, you and I are stepping on an elevator and we're going to go up 10 floors. We got about 45 seconds, man. Pitch me Hello Woofy.
Absolutely. And this is actually what I typically do on Clubhouse, which I highly recommend. If you don't know what Clubhouse is, Google it and join it. It's the new social media network, which is social audio driven. And a lot of the stuff that we're doing is relevant to social audio and social audio commerce. So
at this stage, I want to tell people we're seeing some screen sharing here. So if you're listening to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, audio only, I encourage you to go to our YouTube channel, risingtidestartups.com, and the exact episode is on YouTube, and you'll be able to see the slides.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'll try to visualize most of the things that I'm talking about as well. So for your viewers, I'm essentially going to be pitching, or listeners, I'm going to be pitching and with a couple of slides associated, but I'll make sure that I'm being audible as well. So the pitch is very simple. Hey, potential investor. My name is Arjun, like Argentina without the Tina. I'm the founder of Hello Woofy, which is a smart marketing for underdogs. And the core of the problem that we're trying to solve is that at the end of the day, people like you and me, the underdogs, we have zero insights into tools like this, which look very clunky, very very overly simplified. They do not tell you was it the words, the emojis, the hashtags. What are the ingredients that go into perfecting a perfect marketing message? They don't give you any of those pieces of information to make a better decision. And then when you take a look at this slide where you see something which is enterprise grade, very complicated, very complex, it makes you feel like you need a PhD in marketing to understand how do you take any of this data, go back to your team, create your own content because it doesn't do it for you, and then you also have to distribute it on your own. So despite spending hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions, it doesn't do much of the work. So when you come into Hello Woofy, what you'll see immediately is that the dashboard is designed to be very white space or colorful, because each of the colors determine different functionalities. So for example, purple means long-term strategies, which is the button on the left, and blue means short-term strategies. And in this case, as soon as you start typing a single post, it'll automatically start completing a sentence for you. So for your listeners who are listening in, all I did was type in HOW for how, space A for how are you, but I haven't even completed the word ARE and is already suggesting ARE with the following word, which is you. And of course, that sounds good. How are you? And then I'm going to say I love, but just stop at the O and love. It'll automatically complete the sentence for me. And then continue so on and so forth and say, and my coffee. But then what you'll notice below is that it's starting to give you emoji recommendations based on what you're typing in real time. Now, this is probably one of the most important things to talk about, because in 2021, we're all cavemen. We all like our visuals, and studies show, based on Adobe's research, that emojis tend to drive a lot of engagement and a lot of purchase intent. So again, for your viewers or listeners who are listening in, what I'm showing now is a complex network graph. It's a web showing you the relationship to each word, to each emoji, to each hashtag, so that you can understand how the three languages coexist, come up with the perfect marketing message.
That's
And that's the
amazing.
technology, and that's the technology we're using here. So good.
That is amazing.
Yeah. And we're also tracking what emojis are being used in real time, what's popular, what's trending, so you can see it in real time if you wanted to. And then based on what you typed in so far, we'll even find images that are royalty free that you could use, such as these images here that you're seeing about coffee, about love, because I typed in words related to that. And then accordingly, I can choose those images and throw them in. Or if I want to transcribe it, for example, a motivational image, for example, make this day great, throw that image in there. I can find hashtags, emojis based off the image, but I can also transcribe the image word for word. So this image says, make this day great. All I have to do is it'll read the image for me, throw the text from the image directly into the post, and it'll automatically, give me more emojis as well based on that. And so there's a lot of smart technology built in. We realized we should start with social media, then we expanded to blogging, and that allows you to essentially autocomplete entire blog posts. But I think the most important thing, and I think something that I'm really proud of with my team to have built, is the ability to broadcast directly to your customers' living rooms or wherever their Alexa smart speakers are, so long as they opt in, with marketing content or top of funnel educational thought leadership content. And the reason is because there are 500 million devices around the world, but only 400 business apps, and a third of them don't even work. So this video you're seeing now is an example of my living room with all these apps, which are built by multi-billion-dollar broadcasting companies. But what about the Rising Tide podcast or the Joe Coffee app or skill? It's too complicated for you to build one and then keep maintaining it and then have the infrastructure to broadcast. In our case, just go into our platform, schedule a video on the right, text on the left, links below the text as well. And you can literally have your customer click on the link after you say, hey, this is Rising Tide podcast. If you want to learn more about the tips and tricks we talked about today in the 2 minutes, click on the link to the left and join our Rising Tide Mastermind starting this weekend. And then guess what? You can take the customer to your website on the TV or the smart speaker, which is with a touchscreen built in, and that could be a call to action. Hold up your phone, call Kevin directly, call Bob directly, call Lisa directly, and talk to their sales team, or make a quick phone call as well. And so there's a lot of capabilities that, again, have been kept away from small businesses. And we're trying to make this old school approach, which is infomercials, new school with all of this amazing smart speaker technology, but affordable for everyone. So that's kind of where we're coming from in terms of our data science and research that we're doing. But again, it's smart marketing for underdogs.
That is incredible. Now is when you integrate into Alexa or whatever, is that a paid service? Is that, I can just, it's like that old joke that talks about, have you seen it? It said, the Postal Service says, you're trying to track your package, and the Postal Service says you sent a package. UPS says, yeah, we're in front of your house in a brown truck, and Amazon goes, we're standing in your living room. Is it that, I hate to use the word intrusive, but I mean, I can't think of a better word.
It's all about letting your customer, your follower, your listener tune in after opting into the service. So you would say, hey, download the Rising Tides app or skill. And then as soon as the person says that to the entire, to their speaker, it'll download that app or skill to all of the speakers. And then once you do that, then that means that you have the ability to you as a creator can broadcast. You can notify the speakers. You can tell them when you might be going live with an offer. The fact of the matter is there are 500 million devices. I have 11. Most people have 1 or 2. And there are these devices that are just sitting there, and big companies like Netflix and Hulu are able to capitalize on the attention and the access. Yep. But if you opt in to listen to Kevin's thought leadership content, or maybe Oprah's, the next Oprah Winfrey's thought leadership content, or if you're trying to be the next top chef like Gordon Ramsay, you can have direct access. But then at certain tiers, you can have e-commerce access too. You can have your customers buy from you, hold up their phone, call your sales team. And it's never been done before, but we actually have built the technology now, or in the process of building attribution analytics. But it's all going to be affordable for small businesses.
That's incredible. I mean, so many times the guests we've had on Rising Tide, we've asked them kind of what that business origin story is, and so often it was built out of their own frustrations. So, how did the idea for this? How did you come up with the idea?
So for us, it was all about making sure that that digital marketing just was dumb, simple, idiot-proof for everyone. You didn't need a degree. You didn't need a sophisticated certificate to be able to do really well for your business and succeed and beat your competitors that have unlimited marketing budgets. So if we could allow you to essentially win against unlimited marketing budgets with smart marketing technology for the price of a cup of coffee, then you had a fighting chance. Now, when you hear in last year 400,000 businesses, nearly 500,000 businesses shutting down, they don't exist anymore. And that's because they couldn't get out of their own way in terms of traditional marketing, traditional mindsets, and being seen more by not only their existing customers, but by new customers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're always, doing moonshot projects. We're always trying to come up with new ways to allow small businesses not only to create content, but distribute the content. I mean, one of the things that we're working on right now is the ability to essentially use AR technology, augmented reality. And you can literally, if I'm showing viewers right now, the ability to see your posts, walk amongst your posts, almost like a gallery, and say, oh, I want to post this today. I don't like this. I'm going to push that post over. And imagine having an art gallery full of marketing content posts from your category and your library and your Hello Woofy account. And then being able to visually say, okay, this makes sense. This is going to go out tomorrow, next week, next month, things like that. And so we're always pushing. I mean, we have a couple of things that we didn't even talk about that we're working on, but it's all about bringing small business marketing to the future, but today.
So all you've done is you've created a repeat customer that you're going to have to come back in about 6 months and share all the new tech you've created in the last 6 months. Because it's like, I mean, I can just picture this mad scientist sitting in his office, every day, just trying to come out. He's got a huge whiteboard. Probably has whiteboards on about 3 walls in the office, so he can write everywhere. And
well,
come up with
my
ideas.
New York City apartment is more like like one wall and a door and a window. But yes, in my head, I have all of that. I mean, I actually have a whole bunch of ideas that we're constantly working on. Who knows where quantum computing might help marketers.
Yeah.
Who knows where different technologies that are moonshots today can help others. So we're constantly thinking about that.
So who's the ideal customer for Hello Woofy?
Such a great question. So majority of our customers are women. They tend to be coaches, podcasters. They tend to be direct marketers, e-commerce store owners, or somewhat of a hybrid retail and e-commerce store owners. And they tend to be between the ages of 40 and 60. So we know exactly our avatar. We know exactly the kind of person. A lot of them are moms or working moms from home. And so we're always constantly looking to, reach out to more people like that. Of course, we have men on the platform too, but like I said, majority of our customers are along those lines. And so, and we figured out over time that listening to your customers in the Facebook group, in our case, is Content Masters, it really allows you to figure out exactly what to build next, how to build it 90% of the time. 10% of the time, like Steve Jobs said, you don't have any idea, or the customer doesn't have any idea that they even wanted it,
right,
in terms of the feature or the product. So my goal and my motto is spend 90% of your time in things you know really well, listen to your customers, add that to the roadmap, and then a small sliver of 10% of your resources should go towards moonshots. So the Alexa speaker came out of that. The Google Chrome extension, where you can literally type anywhere on the internet, came out of that. The AR project is in that phase right now and will be deployed in the next couple of weeks. So there's always that approach that you should be taking, in my opinion, especially if you're a small company, but also as a big company.
Yeah. It's kind of like that Google 20% of their time was spent on just kind of unrelated projects or whatever. I would have completely and utterly missed your ideal client. I would have guessed something completely different. I would have said, these are like maybe social media managers. They're probably pretty young demographically. this is just making their job so much easier because they have to create all this content, and the platform is doing it for them,
Yeah,
almost.
and I'm
So
surprised. In most cases, the business owner is in that age, in that in that avatar, but they'll bring on other people who are are a bit younger.
mhm.
But majority of our customers, even if they're doing it themselves, they tend to be between 40 and 60.
Well, it's good I mean, I'm in that demographic, so it's good that we're still tech savvy,
Yeah,
at
no, I
least
mean, I'm turning
tech savvy
30.
enough. Yeah, that's right.
I'm turning 30 in 4 days or so. Yeah, 4 days. So fun
You're
time.
catching us. That's right.
There we go.
I'm curious, like if you look back now, go back to 2016,
Yeah.
2015, about the time that you were kind of really formulating this, what do you know now that you wish you would have known then that would have saved
Oh
you,
boy.
just one or two things that would have saved you so much time and effort that may have
Yeah.
a little bit of a universal, appeal?
Yeah, it would definitely have been making sure that I would say, like I said earlier, knowing how to hire, knowing how to raise capital, knowing how to deliver the product, even if it's not ready to ship, you're just shipping it anyways to get the feedback, knowing how to build a community on Facebook groups, because we started as a whim, but it turned into one of our biggest lead gens all of a sudden. Knowing how to do paid advertising very effectively, and knowing what ROAS means, which is return on ad spend, knowing how business manager works on Facebook, knowing how to put clawbacks in advisory documents or in co-founder documents, knowing how to, take a look at equity crowdfunding so you can understand how to raise capital from the public markets, and also just hanging out with more rich people. Because the richer you get, the easier it gets to get rich. Someone once said that. And so, for Mark Cuban, getting a spot on, tomorrow morning CNBC, morning interview is not hard. But for me to do it, I'd have to pull a couple of strings, talk to a couple of mentors, talk to a couple of advisors and investors. And what I realized is that once we started generating more revenue was a lot easier. But getting over the hump of shipping product where someone would pay for it, building the Facebook lookalike audiences, so we knew, how to find the next 10 million people that look like the first 1,000 or 2,000 people that came on and paid us. Those things are so important. And so I went all in, built a foundation. I put up a profile everywhere on the internet I could find, so I could start ranking in search. I put up as many, articles. I, did as much as possible to rank, because all of that effort will eventually capitalize on itself almost, exponentially.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things I would say. I'm sure I missed something, but those are some of the things that come to mind in terms of if I knew earlier.
I mean, some of those are just lessons you just learn along the way. I mean, it's not like we made big mistakes early and we're trying to recover from them. I mean, this is just like, this is part of the journey. You don't know everything at the beginning. But it is interesting. I mean, I think of all the things that you mentioned today, the one that I think might have been the most costly would be, not vetting, maybe the investors or people, well at the very beginning. And you said not shipping the product too.
Having said that, never have any regrets, because everything that happens is a lesson.
Exactly.
And if you don't play the role of a victim and you actually play the role of someone who has a lesson to learn that other people don't, you have a chip now, you have an experience now, you're actually a much better founder. I mean, especially with the Reg CF stuff that we're doing with the equity crowdfunding, working under the scrutiny of the SEC, having to follow so many rules and regulations. As I'm speaking, I'm constantly thinking about what can I say publicly, what can I not say.
Yeah.
It just matures you as a founder light years ahead of your time.
Yeah.
And if and when I'm able to IPO the company, and take it to the next level, I know probably more so than most founders will, speaking to their banking partners, at that level. So I think everything happens for a reason, and it happens for a good reason.
So what do the next 5 years look like in your mind?
Next 5 years, I mean,
I know that's like a lifetime in entrepreneur world.
Oh yeah, it's been 5 years since I put down the first, I guess pixels on my Adobe Illustrator canvas and started drawing out the first version of Woofy. I would say definitely further along in terms of customers, revenue, much further along, to the point that we're profitable. and potentially, in the public space in terms of listed on an exchange, if I can do that. That's obviously not guaranteed, but something I'd like to do. And probably, with a team internationally, we have a team internationally today, but probably, 10 times bigger, 15 times bigger, so that we can actually keep up with our growth. And personally, it used to be that I only wanted to build my company, only wanted to scale it, only wanted to make money. But today, having lost my mom a few years ago, it's one of the other most important things on my mind is taking care of my dad.
Yeah.
So he wants a log cabin on the side of a mountain. He's a hiker, he's a mountaineer, he's a climber, professional. I mean, he was a professional climber at one point. He's now getting back into it. So definitely spending more time with him, and yeah, I think now I'm doing things for different reasons. I'm doing it to have a family in the future and things like that.
Right. And it's certainly an internal driver. I mean, that you have a very strong why that gets you out of bed in the morning, because you're probably not sleeping a whole lot anyway. But what have we not touched on that you just like to kind of wrap us up with today? And then I want you to share where's the best place to find you online.
It's a great question. I mean, I think just keeping in mind how technology is evolving, I'm constantly thinking about. So I was in Albany yesterday actually to get my state ID done because I couldn't get an appointment at the DMV in the city. So I went 2.5 hours north, 3 hours north to get my state ID made there, and just constantly think about what drives people. Why are people up there in general, or just in general in suburbia? They have a different level of energy. They have a different level of mindset. But then when you come into a major city, then there's a completely, it's like, I have to do this really quickly. I have to get from point A to point B. I have to, do something which is very ambitious. Just start looking at the psychology of people and what, ticks them, what triggers them. Because when it comes to marketing, you not only have to be very simple in your words, and almost like a Donald Trump level, which is like 10th grade, or not 10th grade, third grade level, 10-year-old language. You want to start noticing what is actually happening in people's minds. So I was having conversations on the train, and when I got there, and people were so friendly and they were taking their time. One of the guys at the museum would, drop me off at the train station because I couldn't find an Uber. It took 20 minutes to get an Uber. But then I realized that wouldn't happen in the city. Like, people are as soon as the bell rings, they're out. They're, trying to get on the subway and run. And so marketing to them, it has to be more on point. The reason I say that is because from a technology standpoint, one of the theories I have is that we've been going from an evolutionary standpoint. We've been going from frames per second to waves per second. So we had Facebook originally, then we had Twitter, which was kind of more about the mobile side of things as, hardware became more powerful and mobile technology became more powerful. But then we realized that Pinterest came out of nowhere, Instagram came out of nowhere, which are both all very visual. They were static images at one point. And now we have TikTok, which is images, but multiple images together stacked on top of each other. We call it a video. So frames per second, as hardware grew and became better and better, it allowed for a lot more intimacy, a lot more engagement, and different kinds of marketing in that. So that's one thing. Now, on the other side, audio waves per second, we didn't really have a platform where audio was at the core of social interaction. MySpace came close to it a little bit, but we were really, at the behest of the internet companies. But today, Clubhouse, it's real-time audio. It's what we're doing right now with multiple people. And the things that we're doing with smart speakers is also about audio and commerce, and it's also now bringing in that first theory, which is frames per second, which is a visual means with an audio layer and having commerce at the core of it. So I'm always fascinated from a psychology standpoint, from an anthropology standpoint, how is society developing? Because even the things we talk about from an emoji standpoint, it's just hieroglyphics. And if you take a look at cuneiform from the Middle East, if you take a look at Chinese language overall, it's so fascinating how we're visual creatures. And whether you talk about marketing, you talk about anything, even the piece of metal we send into space on Voyager, it's all about being visual. And so we didn't talk about too much about visuals and whatnot, but I think that's important.
Yeah, that absolutely. Well, remind the listeners of your website again.
Yeah, it's just hellowoofy.com, which is HELLOWOOFY.com. My email's on the bottom. Reach out at any point and tell me your story as a small business owner, as an underdog, how you built your business, what are some of the things you're going through, what are some of the features we could add to our our marketing platform for you, because that just helps us be a better small business ourselves.
I mean, this is we've done this podcast for about 3 years, and this is one of those times that I feel like that I've talked to somebody that we could really be reading about and seeing on TV a lot in the near future. God. So yeah, I think there's some real potential with what you got going there, and we may be chatting with the next unicorn founder right here, right on this little podcast called Rising Tide Startups. But Arjun, really appreciate you taking the time and just really playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Have a great evening.
You too. Virtual hugs.
Another episode in the books. We hope you heard some great takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on iTunes and YouTube. As always, thanks for listening to Rising Tide.